All right. Yep, it's live and
Do you want from me?
More.
How much more successful do you want me to be?
More successful.
How many records can my records break?
More records.
But I'm the best.
Make a song about Hitler. It'll be fucking awesome.
What the does that mean, Kobe Bryant?
You're welcome.
yeah. So welcome to the Gospel of Comics, everybody. We have less fake and gay supervision by Ayrton and no adult supervision by Church. So it's just Rune and I. We're gonna ramble a bit and talk a bit about some stuff.
Well, by the metrics that have been laid out, if Ayrton's not here, the show is 25% more gay. If Church is not here, that means now the show is 50% more gay. So this show is at least half gay.
I mean, I really feel like we need some Scott Steiner math to explain this, but so
well, because all four of us are here, then it's 0% gay, right? Because we're all wearing our socks.
I mean, maybe. What if I'm not wearing my socks right now?
You know what? I don't know, and I'm not going to ask.
Exactly.
I'm going to assume you're wearing your socks for my safety.
So I've been running into a problem generating content for the show. I believe I may be experiencing slop toxicity, where I have reached a point where I just can't watch certain slop, and I don't know what the solution to this is. First, it was the Lilo and Stitch movie, and I tried to watch the new Karate Kid movie, and just couldn't.
Well, there's that, but I think there's also. You recall some months ago, some weeks ago, an increment of time, they were talking about superhero fatigue. I don't think you or I, being comic book fans, are actually tired of superheroes at all.
Well, superhero fatigue's fake.
Right? No, that's what I'm getting at. Superhero fatigue is fake. But the thing is, we say, oh well, no, people are tired of bad movies. It's not just that we're tired of bad movies. I think we are specifically tired of the same slop, the same style of slop. We're tired of slop movies.
Well, the slop is not a singular genre. It's just a big congealed pool.
Right, but here's the thing: is that if it was bad, but like 80s bad, we'd be down. We'd be like, oh, this is gloriously bad.
We're going to talk about some bad things that I was able to watch, but let me tell you about this Karate Kid movie, right? So what they wanted to do was take the bad Jaden Smith Karate Kid movie and combine it into the main Karate Kid universe.
Okay.
So their solution was Jackie Chan's ancestors taught Kung Fu to Mr. Miyagi's ancestors, who brought it to Okinawa to make Miyagi-Do karate. Yes.
No!
Yes.
Holy fucking shit. I know we just started like algorithm and stuff, but that is, I'm going to call that exactly as, that is this is as lefty as we're ever going to get on the show. That is incredibly racist.
Well, actually, no. That is how karate emerged. Was Japanese people learned Kung Fu and translated it into karate on the island of Okinawa.
Okay. I was under the impression that while there might be connective tissue, that like Okinawa karate was its very specific own thing. Right?
It was the thing they translated from Kung Fu.
Right, but I'm saying like there was a differentiation between mainland karate and Okinawa karate.
No, Okinawa is actually where karate started initially.
Okay, I mean that's better. It's still revisionist as fuck though. Because
I mean it's revisionist for the movie. It's absolutely revisionist for the movie.
Well, because let's be clear here. I was just talking about how much of a piece of shit Jackie Chan is, who in fact recently either wrote a tell-all or a tell-all was written where not only is he apparently just done with women, he's done with beautiful women, right? Because he's getting so many beautiful women knocking down his door, but apparently he beat his son is the accusation, and I have no reason to doubt it, just because I know how he treats his female co-stars. I know how he treats his daughter. He's kind of a giant asshole.
Well,
But
his daughter was kind of fucked up too.
I mean, sure. But the important thing here is that we must remember, anyone paying attention, that anyone who actually makes it big in the Chinese movie scene is also, for lack of better language, state approved.
Mhm.
Right? They are slop for the party, right? Even if they are personally not pro-commie,
Mhm.
right? If they really wanted to be accomplished, they'd get the fuck out of China. Otherwise, they have to toe the line to remain successful. Okay? And I am not going to pretend in any way, shape, or form that a movie called The Karate Kid, in which Jackie Chan, the correct form of Chinese person who has had the eye surgery to have white eyes, right? Teaching kung fu to the little Japanese people is not a state-approved narrative.
Well, I mean, it is history.
It is history presented in a very self-aggrandizing light.
But it doesn't go into that much detail because that is explaining why Jackie Chan's going to show up later in the movie.
Not just because they paid him a bunch of money.
Well, no, they're wanting to merge the popular Karate Kid universe with the Jackie Chan one.
Well, can we also remember that all of this is a Will Smith thing? Not just for his son, but as a producer, he's intimately involved with the Karate Kid thing because he was also a producer on Cobra Kai.
Right. But that was because the whole deal with Jaden Smith. So he had to be brought into Cobra Kai.
Yeah.
Because of rights issues.
I'm just saying, whenever we're talking about Karate Kid in the modern context, we are also technically talking about Will Smith and the continuing drama of the Will Smith. Do we call it a fucking dynasty? Do they want to be a dynasty?
I mean, they're not good for dynasty. But so things open up. There's a student at Jackie Chan's Kung Fu school in Beijing, because of course it's in Beijing. And it is a very good air quality day in Beijing. Like everything, the skies look blue. It's really good. So the kid ends up going to New York with his mom for some reason. Becomes the fish out of water high school student because that's core of the Karate Kid movie, right? Fish out of water student. All right. Then he goes to a pizza shop, makes friends with a pizza girl, teaches her Chinese. And then her dad has problems with mob people, as you do if you're a small businessman in New York. Well, her dad was a former boxer, right?
Right.
And he's wanting to do a comeback, but not as a boxer, but as an MMA fighter. And so he wants the Chinese boy to teach him Kung Fu so he can fight in the MMA reality show thing.
I mean, that's actually not so bad. Being at least passively knowledgeable in MMA, like trends, knowing a specific style is good. Being able to include multiple styles is better.
Right, but he's only got two punching and kicking and one kicking style.
Right. I am not a BJJ cultist, but I am.
And also the young actor who's pretending to be a Kung Fu student is teaching him judo,
which is an entirely different style.
Yes. He gets beaten up by the bad guys, and so the kid has to go on a quest to beat the bad guys, and he calls his master, Jackie Chan, to help him. And his master, Jackie Chan, goes to see Daniel LaRusso so that they can help this boy win an MMA contest by doing martial arts. And about the point in time at which this young guy was teaching teaching the boxing guy kung fu. I'm like going, well, why? Why is this the movie? And I noped out. This wasn't quite like it was with Lilo and Stitch, where the visuals were patently offensive.
I mean, it sounds to me, because I didn't watch it, so I'm going off of your description. It sounds to me like it fails at what Cobra Kai actually succeeded on in season 1.
Making you actually care about a character?
Yeah, so Cobra Kai over seasons, because my mom and I actually watched like the first 3 seasons before she passed, right?
Mm-hmm.
As it added more characters, more permutations, more things. It had the lore nods, and if you're a Karate Kid junkie, you appreciate them. I grew up with the Karate Kid movies, but it lost its center. It lost its primary drive, which was, to a greater or lesser extent, the redemption arc for the blonde kid from the original film, for the villain, right? Whose name I immediately forget and sound like I don't know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But in that season 1, yeah, no, they make you care about him. They make you care about him not just by showing that he's down on his luck, but making it appear as though he's down on his luck in a relatable way, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's got a family with a late great Ed Asner as a complete monster. He's never gotten over his defeat by Danny LaRusso.
Mm-hmm.
He's doing basically spot housework as a contractor, right? Is living out of a bottle one day at a time. This all sucks, but these are all believable problems.
Mm-hmm.
And the worst part is that you see him basically being reminded of his failure everywhere he looks, because Danny LaRusso didn't become anything great either. He's a fucking used car salesman.
Well, no, he sells luxury cars.
He sells luxury cars, but it's like, oh, how many locations do you have? Several across the valley. It's like, right, good job. You're not some national head. You're not some big corpo bigwig. You're a guy who made good, who's a big fish in a small pond. You sucker.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But because they presented it as basically the blue-collar Karate Kid to the surprisingly upper-class original Karate Kid, because, Mr. Miyagi's not poor post-war. With that house, with those cars, right? And
I mean, Mr. Miyagi he did well.
Right, and Danny might have come from, the burbs, but he was the burbs in Cali. Okay, it's
5 signs.
His mom made bank.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it was able to appeal to the little guy. We wanted to see this guy succeed, to overcome his failings and become a better person, right? But here, nothing you've described sounds like, in a deeply meaningful way, that anyone is growing or changing, or that there's any kind of meaningful threat. Yeah, oh yeah, there are mob guys, but what are the mob guys doing? Are the mob guys extorting? Are the mob guys threatening? Are the mob guys going to burn down his house and ruin his business? What's the dealie? Right? How does this translate to I need to MMA for my family?
Mm-hmm.
Why does this require the Jackie of Chans? If the kid can already teach him. This...
well, I mean, he's a kid, this is grown up, and blah, blah, blah.
Well, let's use a different example. I'm a huge fan, if you want to use a more modern film series, of the Ip Man movies. I don't like the one that doesn't have Donnie Yen, but I love Donnie Yen. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And they're again historical propaganda for China, right? But they understand the structure of a martial arts action film. Ip Man starts living a good, pretty normal life, right? Something happens that's unexpected. It's rough. He tries to stay out of it. He tries to walk that even path because he's the dedicated man of peace. You know, we only use the martial arts for self-defense and to defend others. And in the meantime, it's all about discipline, and it's about wisdom and all those things. They're very important, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the bad guys don't leave it alone, and eventually Ip Man is forced yet again to fight for himself, for his family, for the behalf of someone else, for the honor of his students, whatever the motivation is. And you really enjoy watching it when Ip Man goes from, letting things happen to taking the active hand. Right. The only fight in any of his movies that I was kind of about was the Mike Tyson fight.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, come on, they had Donnie Yen fight Mike Tyson. That's fun. I don't give a shit.
And Mike Tyson also, you know, they work the limits.
Right. But that brings us back to the Karate Kid. What's the emotional context? What's the story? Why do I care? If I don't care, then why am I doing this?
Yeah. And I also had the same response when I was watching the Lilo and Stitch movie. So that's another bit of slop, and it's because that one was just so aesthetically painful to my eyes. So we may not have the era of the slop busters, which many people have predicted is going to be coming along.
Well, not only that, but there's no agreement on what's going to break the slop. Some people are putting out like graphics saying we're so back. Look at this, and it's like three of those four are slop. What are you talking about? Like, oddly enough, someone was trying to say that Lilo and Stitch was a slop breaker because it made a bunch of money.
No, it was slop. It was just successful slop.
Yeah. And it was successful slop because we got fooled again.
I mean, did we get fooled, though?
We absolutely got fooled. And I'll tell you how they did it.
I mean, I didn't go to the theater to see it, so I didn't get fooled.
So here, well, yeah, you didn't get fooled. I didn't get fooled. But I'll tell you how they did it. So in the advertising, in the lead up, okay, the first thing they did is they did the smart. They kept quiet. They didn't sell you on any subversive changes. They didn't talk about any kind of politics. They just said, we're making a Lilo and Stitch movie. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the other smart that they did is they looked at the Sonic the Hedgehog films.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you're like, but wait a minute, what do you mean? That's not Disney. It's like, yeah, Disney looked at the competition. Right?
Which is rare for Disney.
And they saw not only how successful the Sonic films were, right? Because that color gradient, that kind of appearance, that kind of humor.
But they did the color gradient wrong. That's neither here nor there.
Right. But specifically, they looked at Sonic the Hedgehog 1, and they looked at the disparity between Tooth Sonic and Cartoon Mouse Sonic. And somebody, somewhere in production, some person had a neuron fire. And that they sent the production note and they said, make the real live action Stitch like the cartoon Stitch.
Unfortunately, they didn't do that with any of the other cartoon characters because they all looked awful.
Right, but they knew for advertising they only needed to show a Stitch looking like a cute, furry, realistic Stitch to get those asses in seats. Because people for the member berries would run to that theater. And they did. Mm-hmm. And then they found out you changed the plot. You completely destroyed the ending. You apparently did the color grading and the visuals wrong. And you removed a villain. And you made everyone else look completely like ass. Because you didn't give your animators enough money or time to do this movie right. Mm-hmm. But you don't care because you got your slot bucket out and you got the money back for it.
Yeah, but I want to talk about some slop that I was able to successfully watch. God help me that I was able to watch it. The end of the Disney Doctor Who era. I saw it. I saw it, and I deeply regret that I've seen it because it was bad. And I'm not impressed by Shudigawa as an actor in his run as Doctor Who, but I feel he has to be a better actor than the material they gave him over 2 series. And they're 2 abbreviated series because Disney only wanted 8-episode seasons, like 2 months worth of content. So it was bad. It was bad. It was ill-conceived. It was ill-thought out. So there's some things I'm going to talk about before we get to the episode. So these 2 seasons are set up against, basically, like, using comic book terms, there's the Elders of the Universe in the Marvel Comics, right?
Right.
Well, Doctor Who had a thing called the Elders of the Universe. One of the guys was the Celestial Toymaker. And they had somebody like that in the Elders of the Universe in Marvel Comics, too. So, it's a good archetype, and he just made a whole bunch of new ones that were completely unrelated to the ones that had previously existed. And in the run of this show, we experienced a total of 5 or 6 of them. And they were all resolved within an episode. So imagine, if you will, the divine personification of music is your enemy. In sound. Why do you just eliminate that villain in a single episode? Why is that your monster of the week for an episode? That seems to be a power scaling problem. You have the divine personification of light. Well, you stop him again in a single episode. But why, though? You have a wish baby who grants magical wishes. You defeat him by having him eliminate the wishes. You defeat the god of death by having him turn death into life. These are all resolutions to the plot that happened in a single episode.
So, back in the day, when I was learning how to write, I posited an idea for a story and said I wanted my bad guy to get away. And my mom actually countered me and said, no, you probably shouldn't do that. And I was like, but why? Like, if they get away, they can come back. It's like, yes, but you solidly need them to be defeated or thwarted in some fashion. Right? You want your villain to live and break out of jail and come back? Fine. But have him get caught.
Or, Starscream betrays him and throws his whole plan into disarray.
Right. Because your story needs to have a cohesive end for a feel-good feeling for your audience. When I close that book, I want to feel like the good guys won and I got to see it. Right? If we apply that logic here, there's nothing theoretically wrong with having a villain introduced, challenged, and defeated within an episode.
Sure, but this is a primordial being of reality.
I'm saying even as a primordial being of reality, what's missing is a meta context to sell it. It's not just that they're primordial entities of reality, it's that the Doctor needs to be at bay. And it's like, what do you mean at bay? It's like, we're not just encountering these guys and then fighting them and beating them because screw them. It's like, no, we're racing against time, place to place to place to find them and stop them, because the longer they're out there, the more damage they'll do. Or there's a mastermind behind them all who's moving them like chess pieces and they're directly countering you. There has to be something to make it a credible threat beyond, some assholes exist and we don't like them. That's... that's the thing that's missing, is the sweeping narrative. Otherwise, you're right. You introduce them, fine, but you let them spread, let them lay out there, add them to the canon, and then just put them aside, because even if Doctor Who is canceled in the short term, it doesn't get renewed for another season, you've added to the total canon of the Doctor. It can be picked up by someone else in a novelization, in a comic book, in a video game, in a feature film. You don't have to resolve it here.
And in the old lore, these beings were the Time Lords from the previous universe.
Right.
But we don't get any actual deep lore. These are just primordial beings that just emerged because one of them said so.
Well, there again, it's like, okay, let us take that supposition for granted, right? That entities using this title were Time Lords of a previous reality. Okay, how many times has that happened?
Yeah, no.
Are these the same ones? What if these ones are in fact evil Time Lords that were locked away, and it's a giant cosmic prison escape?
You see,
There are so
that
many
could have
more-
been good.
There are so many more interesting ways to approach this material if you just exert 5 minutes of effort.
Yeah. If we have any effort, but there is not effort here. That is the deep problem with all of this thing.
Well, there's no effort, and there's what we were just talking about before. You know why they use that term. They use that term for these primal entities for the member berry, because they knew the fans would make the connection for them, so they didn't have to work hard. We'll invent a context if there isn't one.
Now, during the 2 seasons of Doctor Who, there was a mystery box in the first season. The Mystery of Ruby Sunday. When the mystery was, she just was at some church when she was a baby. And there was some weird time travel shenanigans that happened. It wasn't a real mystery.
I'm also going to put out the controversial opinion. I hate the name Ruby Sunday.
Everybody does.
Because you know what it is. It's very much like go get the petrol clip. People need to see this. Very much like that conversation. You know why she's named Ruby Sunday, right?
Well, because of Ruby Road.
No, because it's a music reference.
Well, no, that's what I mean.
Ruby Tuesday.
Well, actually, it's a reference also to the church at Ruby Road, which is another musical reference, which was explicitly referenced.
That's fucking retarded. Stop it.
Yeah.
It's literally the Magic Johnson joke. Stop it. Get some help.
No, that's Michael Jordan, sir.
Michael Jordan. Sorry. I stand by it though. It's the same frickin' thing. Get some help.
But yes. This clip that Rune wants us to invoke is a good strong clip. Let me do that here. Pull this up. It's a shame Church isn't here, and I finally broke down to use. Oh, really? You're not. Give me a second here. Have a mild technical. There we go. That's what I wanted. Yeah, here we go. And this is a prime example of what happens when a creative becomes drunk on his own power. There we go. Here we go.
Here the other day, and on the call sheet, she was down as Petrol.
She was called Petrol.
Why?
I'll tell you why. Because one day I think there'll be a companion called Petrol. It's been a name that's been in my head for a long while.
Is it?
Yeah, and I might use it one day. I might not. I might go have someone called Felicity from 1602 or something. But equally, Petrol. It's a good name.
Oh, you like it? Okay, there we are.
Yeah, it works, doesn't it? Everyone kind of picked up on that.
Yeah, well, we did. We've been asking everyone what their code name would be as a result.
Exactly. No one's like going, what's the code name? Something about the word Petrol that goes ping like that.
Yeah.
So one day, maybe you might see a Petrol in Doctor Who.
When we had
That is a deeply stupid comment from a stupid man.
You know, you and I were talking about this earlier, but I just had a mental image. I just had a lightning bolt hit me in the head. Do you know who had the same energy?
Rian Johnson?
No, Kathleen Kennedy.
Oh, yes.
Because Star Wars now has an intelligent gay rock named Geode.
Thank you for reminding me of that. I didn't want to be.
God, your
I didn't want
pain.
to remember
I
that.
feel it so viscerally.
I didn't want to remember that existing, but now I
But
do.
you agree, it's the same energy.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. So, in the second season, there wasn't a mystery box per se. It's we have to get Belinda Chandra back to Earth, but we can't for some reason. And at the end of the first series, they brought back an iconic Doctor Who villain for a disappointing finale, and that was Sutek, who was part of a race of godlike aliens that fought with the Time Lords briefly, called the Osirans. But instead of making him look like his cool space android Pharaoh self, they made him look like a giant Anubis dog. He was disappointing. And in this time, they bring back Omega, the first and greatest of the Time Lords, who went mad and evil. And this time, they turned him into a bad PlayStation 2, maybe PlayStation 3 is more generous, Skeleton Man. Omega was part of the triad of leaders who formed Time Lord Society. He invented all the science that makes Time Lords work. Makes them immortal, makes them be able to travel through time, all that. And they just haven't become a big weird zombie thing that just wants to eat people. And then that's only a third of the episode. So they built it up. They brought back an iconic villain that the fans have been asking for decades. Had her get eaten by the zombie unceremoniously once the zombie shows up. And then Doctor Who shoots a gun, which is very... Doctor Who's a lot like Batman with guns. It's not that he doesn't use guns, but when the Doctor uses guns, it's serious. It's like when The Rock first started his career as a movie star. He didn't use guns until the third act, when things finally got serious and he had to get some guns to kick some serious ass.
I mean, that's literally a plot point of The Rundown, which is actually a hilariously awesome movie.
It is. It is.
For the whole movie, The Rock refuses to use guns, surrounded by bad guys using guns, until he's literally pinned down, being shot at behind some rubble, while a drunken Irish pirate recites Dylan Thomas's Rage Against the Light. And then, and only then, does The Rock stand up with shotguns and just start ending people. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So
because once upon a time, The Rock could act.
Well, let's not go too crazy. Once upon a time, The Rock knew how to get movie roles that were good for him.
Yes.
So the Doctor has his iconic sonic screwdriver. Well, the problem for Russell T Davies is those were too much like guns. So he had Ncuti, the gay Rwandan Scottish refugee, had his sonic screwdriver look like a TV remote control, so that it didn't look like a gun. But the big action climax of the final episode for Ncuti, he's shooting a gun. And it wasn't even originally a gun. It was something that he got tricked into using by building a series of connections between stars throughout time and space. And because of that, it had the power of 1 billion suns. For some reason. And it shot a laser at the man. Now, you probably didn't pay attention to the Doctor Who review from last week, because they were in a thing called Wish World, where they gave a right-wing incel a magic baby that he was able to make a wish and create a near-utopian society with. How did the Doctor defeat a magic wishing baby? He got access to a time travel hotel that exists between time and space, and they had him open up the doors so that the different time energy flowed out, and it broke the wish. That was it. That was how we defeated the villain who got a magic god baby to defeat the Doctor. It's stupid. It's stupid. But the whole rest of the episode, whole 2/3 of the episode focuses on a missing baby. That was the Doctor and his companion's baby. that had gotten magicked into existence. And then his companion was retconned to, instead of being an annoying single nurse, to being a mother. And she was willing to go back because she had to get back to her baby. And the doctor sacrificed himself so this woman who was really annoying, because we didn't see her after the whole time travel shenanigans, just wanted to get back to her baby. And don't you, the audience, feel bad for hating this character who just wanted to get back to her baby?
Right.
And then Shooty, who had gotten Hollywood fired from the show at this point, and had arranged to get Hollywood fired after he arranged to leverage his contract to get out of being held in limbo for a third season, was replaced by Billy Piper, who was the first companion of the modern era of Doctor Who. And Billy Piper was not replaced as announcing Billy Piper as the Doctor. It just says introducing Billy Piper. This leaves it ambiguous that is she the new Doctor? Well, maybe if you want to redo the series and pay for another season. Is she just the bad wolf entity? Maybe. Is she the moment? Well, she could be that too. Did somehow Rose come from the alternate dimension where she was stuck with her clone version of the Doctor? I mean, that could be what happened too. So we're left with a cliffhanger that's uninteresting and just makes people mad, and one where they even admit that she was there for one episode and maybe more, who knows? And maybe we'll explain why it happened. And this is an iconic, almost 65-year-old television franchise. And this is how what will be most likely the last episode until 2027 is going to be. And the actor who played the Doctor in this most recent season, there was more time from his announcement as being cast as the new Doctor to the first episode he appeared in than his entire run playing the character. So, what do you think about the ignominious end of Doctor Who?
I mean, quite frankly, it was inevitable based on the behavior of the stewards involved. Right?
Yeah.
Because there's already been talk for decades, or not decades, years, about the laziness of Davies' writing. Even from people that are now somewhat disdained expressly for their decorum. Everything now centers around the Doctor. Rather than the Doctor being a touchstone to stories, he is the story. Everything is, remember this antagonist you liked? Because now, look, the kid with the gas mask is back. Oh, look, it's the 4th, 5th, or 6th time the Weeping Angels have appeared because that episode was real good. Right? And just over and over again. And it's like, why? Because it's lowest common denominator effort material. It's not hard. It's not difficult. Right? Just over and over again. Time and again. As long as you will do the slop, we will we'll give it.
But for me, I was able to put up with this slop because I, as a young man, fell in love with Doctor Who, watching on PBS, as many young American men and women did. So I had to see how this would collapse and fall to its end.
Right.
Much like I did with Star Wars. And I couldn't put up with that for Trek, though, because there was just too much of that pain to absorb. Although what I have seen online is a lot of Star Trek fans are going like, man, I thought it sucked to be a Star Trek fan, but I feel really bad for you Doctor Who fans.
Right.
So, I want to talk about something good though. The King of the Hill reboot. Have you been watching, keeping up with some stuff from that?
I am familiar, but before we get into the King of the Hill reboot, I wanna share something real quick that I think is pertinent to this. What has befallen Doctor Who, I think, is a cycle that I actually outlined of all places in a comment on a Substack. Okay? Friend of mine was talking about how he drops in and out of subcultures, right?
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have a, quote, tribe because the social tribalism doesn't stick.
I mean,
right?
It's fake and gay.
Well, no, I mean, it's also real. That's the thing. It becomes fake and gay. All right? But let me give you what I said here, and then we can hash out its applicability here. Quote, I find the comments about the goth subculture very strong. To me, we, proverbially, fast track through the same thing we're watching now with comics and video games. Mainstream appeal, mainstream degradation, and then a return to the previous status quo that feels unusual and strange. Where once goth was the remit of people who dressed in black, talked about Satan, and there was an eclectic mix of artists, artisans, musicians, occultists, poets, and spiritualists, and people who talked about Satan to freak out the normies, we got hijacked by businesses. For a while, all you had to do to be goth was wear black, dance techno, and whine. We'll never live down that we birthed emo as the disco to our rock and roll, because it was all the appearance of goth with none of the edge in a pre-formatted, business-accepting model. Then there was bubblegum goth, where we dress dark and brutal, but we're happy, and all of its permutations. And in the scene, assholes who would never have spoken up with their bullshit felt empowered to churn the wheel to the extent that we're now a subculture known for self-righteous pseudo-philosophers spooling garbage while looking like a LARP group. Except anyone in the scene who still knows it isn't true. That isn't us. And we're so much smaller and more isolated and at risk from the same forces of conformity that have always offered casual oppression despite being more connected than ever. All because people sold out, and having sold out, started mouthing political talking points in lieu of a personality. Right? But that's the thing. Is 3 steps. Something gains the mainstream appeal. Doctor Who is now more popular than ever.
Actually, it's less now, but yes.
Well, it was, because Doctor Who was an easier, more approachable science fiction than, say, Star Trek. Or some of the hard science series, because Doctor Who doesn't challenge you to understand math, right? Then it underwent mainstream degradation, where it was good, but it just seems to be getting worse, despite everybody likes it. How does that happen, right? And if it doesn't collapse right now, right, in a couple of years at the very least, we're gonna see it abandoned. It'll be dead to go fallow.
Mm-hmm.
And the few Doctor Who fans who remain will either be classic heads who just love the Doctor and they love the old lore and the old material and they'll tell you about who their favorite Doctor is, or it's going to be new heads who don't actually give a shit about Doctor Who, but they love the opportunities that Doctor Who gave them to tell you about their specific ideology. And the subculture is more or less destroyed. The interest group, the fandom, is utterly collapsed and may never reconstitute.
I mean, it might. We got a shot. But
I mean, you hold out the hope, but I'm just saying.
Yeah. So, so the King of the Hill.
So I've tried to talk to my friend who's a big King of the Hill fan about this a couple of times. He's actively avoiding it. He wants to stay neutral. There's actually a plan. August 4th, when the show comes out, which let's see, June, July, August is a Monday, so it's a work day, or that's the day I have off. I don't have to work. we might actually just go to his house and have a watch party, and a bunch of friends and I who we're not even necessarily King of the Hill fans, but we've become sort of King of the Hill fans due to a tabletop game.
I mean, King of the Hill is the most popular anime in Japan.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, we did a quick side thing. We did a meme. we did a meme as a tabletop. I wanted to run Hunter the Vigil, but I couldn't quite sell my friends on it because they liked the idea of monster hunters, but they were like, I don't know, World of Darkness. So I gave them this context. I said, all right, I want you to imagine King of the Hill. And they were like, okay. And I want you to imagine all the characters exactly as they are in King of the Hill. And they said, okay. Now I want you to imagine that the series that we saw was them as monster hunters on their off day. It's like, wait, what do you mean? It's like all the episodes we didn't see, all the life actions we didn't see was Hank and the boys going out and hunting monsters. All the episodes we did see was their civilian life. And this spawned a series of serious conversations. People were like, wait a minute, it's like, what about Dale? It's like, oh, Dale's smarter than anyone recognizes. It's like, well, because he's right, because all of the conspiracies are real. It's like, yeah, and he knows. It's like, does he know about Redcorn? It's like, yes, he absolutely knows John Redcorn is fucking his wife. It's like, oh man. And so a chronicle was spawned. We played it, and it was called King of the Vigil. And everyone played a King of the Hill character in a hunter game. And yes, we made the funny voices. The guy who played Boom Howard, my friend Ben, has an amazing imitation of Dale Gribble. We had a Spanish guy who totally did Khan. It was amazing.
I like it.
But still, this friend group we might gather in 2 months' time to see the opening on opening night on Hulu. Because if you're gonna watch something terrible, why not watch it with friends, right? But we'll find out. It could be great.
But it's actually not terrible.
No, the setup makes sense. There's a bunch of questions. I think what is actually the biggest hurdle it's going to have, something that people aren't talking about because they're too busy waffling on other things or mad speculation, is between the end of the last series and the start of this one, the voice actor for Dale Gribble died.
So here's something about that. They are actually talking about it. So he was alive to record for 6 of the 8 episodes.
Right.
And the voice actor for Khan is going to finish the work for him for the last 2 episodes.
I heard that. I heard that might be the case. I also heard something else, which is hilarious and would be on brand for King of the Hill, but I don't think would last in a funny way. There's rumor that he might have a throat device to speak. He might have a robot voice.
I mean, that would be funny.
That would be funny. If they did it for one episode, like the last episode, it would be fucking hilarious. I don't think it would have staying power for multiple seasons.
So there are several interesting things I found out. I saw there was a teaser trailer they did that showed the 8 years from the final episode to the start of the current new reboot era of King of the Hill, which is fascinating. Dale's running for mayor of Arlen,
right?
At some point, and I'm like going, I would actually be kind of interested if somehow the people of Arlen elected Dale mayor.
Mayor Gribble.
Because Dale was actually good that time he was an HR executive.
Until he went too far.
I mean, he could be good as a mayor until he goes too far.
I know, right?
I mean, that could be good material.
Yeah.
One of the things one of the King of the Hill YouTubers I caught a video from was excited about was the possibility that Good Hank may be a major character for the new season.
Hank's Japanese brother?
No, Good Hank. He's Cotton's brother with the girl he met who was the stripper.
Ah.
And so Good GH was very strongly connected to Bobby, but then Bobby moved away after high school. So that could be interesting, seeing GH being upset that his mentor and sort of kind of father figure was gone.
That's the thing I'm not sure about, really. Spoilers for something that's not even out yet. Bobby is, quote, living the dream being a chef in Texas, in Dallas. To the best of my memory, I thought Bobby was going to be a comedian, so I guess
that evolved during the show. If you don't remember, Bobby developed a talent for identifying quality cuts of meat.
I do remember that.
And then he got into cooking and barbecuing, as all good Texans do. So he evolved, as we do when we grow up, and he became a chef.
That component had slipped my mind. I freely admit I missed some episodes, but he's, as the best I understand it, he's friends with Connie because they decided to not pursue a relationship because they were too young. He's obviously friends with Joseph, although Joseph doesn't seem to have evolved much from the non-clip we've seen.
I mean, he's playing the dumb jock guy. Those people rarely need to evolve as characters.
But basically, my fear is that Bobby is basically just going to be Bobby. He's just going to be a full-grown man-baby version of himself.
I mean, he's a 20-something, but he has a good job. So there's some interesting angles there. And
there could be, but I'm just saying they could also completely drop the ball.
And one of the other things a lot of people were confused about online is that Hank Hill moved to an Aramco town in Saudi Arabia to make his money for his retirement nest egg. But people quite correctly are pointing out, no, those Aramco towns are like some dropped 1950s America in the middle of Saudi Arabia.
Right.
So that place would be perfect for Hank Hill. And then he comes back to see the world that has changed while he was abroad overseas.
Well, there's that, and as stated, it's a nest egg. The sheer amount of money you make working in those towns is pretty vast.
Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot of really interesting things that are going to come out of this show, and I'm looking forward to it.
I mean, we hope.
And it has, the creative team, but they're also people who are disciplined, unlike what we've seen from Mr. Rusty Davies in Doctor Who, who's not a disciplined player.
Well, I think we can safely say that Mike Judge is known to have some pull. He's done enough successful things that while he is not necessarily as powerful or name brand as, say,
a Rusty Davis.
Well, I was going to actually say, because say in animation, it'd say Seth.
Yeah.
Seth MacFarlane. It's like he's not without gravitas, such that if the corporate tries to interfere, Mike Judge can be like, no, we're not doing that. We're not invalidating our characters, and I have a contract that says we're not invalidating our characters. Thank you.
He's not quite as good as what's his face from One Piece, but he's pretty good.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to it. I think that's really a good thing.
So what you're saying, Larry, is that here on the Gospel of Failure, the Gospel of Comics, the Church of Failure, where we always talk about things being terrible and nothing ever works out, we just talked very, very positively about some material on the internet.
We did. And now we're going to talk about something a little bit different. So Dan Harmon arose and said some things, and I wanted to talk to you about it.
Wait, Dan Harmon is feeling empowered to speak after he destroyed a working relationship with another person's reputation so that he can control Rick and Morty?
Yes, that Dan Harmon.
The same Dan Harmon that did Harmon Quest, one of the most egregiously awful watched D&D sessions I've ever seen.
Yeah, that same Dan Harmon.
He thinks he can run his mouth.
So Rick and Morty, co-creator Dan Harmon, explains the show's South Park rule. Rick and Morty, co-creator Dan Harmon, explained the Adult Swim series South Park rule and how it applies to writing a season's episodes. All right. When it comes to social satire and tackling all the weird and wonderful and everything in between things that make humans human, Adult Swim's Rick and Morty has been twisting the knife with the best of them for the past 7 seasons. I'm going to say maybe 2 of those seasons were good. But when it comes to hot topics and in-the-moment headline grabbers, the animated series tends to steer clear. During a recent interview ahead of the premiere of their 8th season, co-creators Dan Harmon discussed how the writers looked to Trey Parker and Matt Stone's South Park when deciding on making pop culture references. We have the South Park rule, which is let's not play a South Park game because South Park can do it faster and better than us. So it's one thing for the thing you referenced for, like, oh, they're in a Squid Game outfit, so it's a direct reference, and it's something that's hard to predict this, and I think that it's when something is so culturally impactful, then we go like, well, it's going to be timeless no matter what, or it's going to feel like a timely reference, but people will. If you get it, you don't, and if you don't, it doesn't hinge on it. Harmon explained during an interview with Cinema Blend.
So, Larry, I don't speak retard. Can you translate that for me?
Yes, he said basically we only reference pop culture if it's going to become obvious.
Okay.
And it's going to be something that's going to be culturally meaningful. And this is a lesson they took from the writers on South Park.
That show I don't watch and don't care for.
Well, right. You don't watch and you don't care for it. But I would like to bring up a writing lesson from Matt and Trey Parker that Dan Harmon should perhaps learn from. And perhaps should incorporate into his creativity. Hold up. I hate putting YouTube into this thing. It's kind of dumb, and I hate it.
I mean, we hate YouTube too. We use it. We hate it.
We do.
I basically use YouTube as an extended jukebox these days.
Same.
Just hold right here. Don't move.
Please welcome the Emmy Award-winning and Tony
I'm nervous. I don't know why I'm
creators
nervous.
of South Park, Matt Stone and Trey Parker. You think I'm kidding, right?
Hey! Our whole South Park writers' room, one whole wall is one of these. And we've got it split up into 3 acts.
We have different colored markers just like here too. Look at
Yep.
We have that.
And I walk around with the markers like this, and we'll go, okay, we do a show about
This
this.
is
I was like,
our writer's room.
oh, okay, well, somewhere, okay, this would be a funny scene if we had
That's
this.
true.
Each individual scene has to work as a kind of funny sketch. You don't want one scene that's just like, well, what was the point of that scene? We found out this really simple rule that maybe you guys have all heard before, but it took us a long time to learn it. But we can take these beats, which are basically the beats of your outline, and if the words "and then" belong between those beats, you're basically. You got something pretty boring. What should happen between every beat that you've written down is either the word "therefore" or "but." Right? So what I'm saying is that you come up with an idea and it's like, okay, this happens, right? And then this happens. No. It should be this happens, and therefore this happens. But this happens, therefore this happens. And that, as soon as we are able to, and literally sometimes we'll write it out to make sure we're doing it. We'll have our beats and we'll say, okay, this happened, but then this happens, and that affects this, and that does to that. And that's why you get a show that feels like, okay, this to that, to this to that, but this, here's the complication to that. And there's so many scripts we read from new writers and things that we see.
God, I see movies.
And
You see movies that you're just watching. It's like this happened, and then this happens, and then this happens. That's when you're in a movie, just going, "What the f am I watching this movie for?" It's just like this happened, and then this happened, and this happened. That's not a movie, That's not a story. Like Trey said, it's those two, but because Therefore, that gives you the causation between.
Right. So now we know why they're not funny.
Well, no, that is funny
No, it's not.
because this happens,
that is-
which is then therefore this happens, which is an escalation
Right,
of the
but
comedic
here's the
tension.
thing. Here's the thing. Words have meanings, Larry. So we know, okay, that and then, right?
Mhm.
Or more accurately, what he's describing, the game of yes and, as used by improvisationalists
Yes.
and considered holy canon in Hollywood, is a trait. So you have a sentence, and then you have another sentence, right? What is but, and what is therefore? What are those?
X therefore Y.
Right, that's mathematical, but I will tell you, those are conjunctions. Those are linking words,
Right.
which means that a but is just and then with a different word. Therefore is just and then with a different word. It's sophistry. That's
Well-
bullshit.
Right. But and then doesn't imply that X leads to Y.
It does.
No, it really doesn't.
No, it 100% does. The problem is not the word, the problem is usage, how it's used. If your and then sucks, then your and then's not good. But having an and then is not bad.
I mean, how many of these movies or TV shows that are slop that I've talked about is like, this happens, and then this happens. In fact, that's what I talked about with the Karate Kid movie.
Right. But what he was describing in a academic environment, okay, is an older form of filmmaking, which is still valid. It's because it's actually a novel format. It's called One Thing Happens After Another. And it is a mechanism by which you increase tension.
Yes.
Right? Now, if used to increase tension, and the increase of tension is qualitative, if it's used well, it's great. Okay? So, if you say your character gets onto the out of control train, and then they are shot at by the bad guys who are on the train, and then they are wounded, and then they fire back, and then the bad guys are defeated, and then the guy has to run through the train to get to the compartment, and then he finds that the compartment is smashed, and then he has to figure out how to stop the train. You're fine. You're fine.
But the and then doesn't sound as good as he gets on the train, but then he's getting shot at.
But they are functionally the same mechanism. It's not better. It's not more intelligent. It is practically identical. It has the same result. X leads to Y. Okay? What I think is a more important, if we actually have to speak well of Trey and Stone, and I don't like them. I don't like them, and I don't like their comedy. But if I have to give them credit where credit's due, I think that their criticism of Family Guy is more pertinent.
And apparently everybody in the animation field was sending them thank you letters for criticizing Family Guy.
Right. For viewers who don't know, and Larry and I throw shit at each other and hoot like apes, of all the things I can say about South Park as someone who doesn't like it, they do have cohesive narrative. They make solid stories, beginning to end, that are self-contained, sometimes with long-running plot lines, but the characters are real, they have personalities.
They also are focused on actual satire as opposed to what most people think satire is.
Right. Family Guy, by comparison, and when asked to describe it, they opined that it was basically balls or soap bubbles or what have you being moved around. So
by manatees.
By manatees. So when two subjects collide, that's when you get the jump cut reference shot. So the plot and the characterization of a Family Guy story is only a loose framework to allow a cutaway gag. Now that's not 100% true, Like,
Well, hold
Family
up.
Guy has some narrative, but it is
Yeah, but-
mostly true.
But Seth MacFarlane even says that's mostly true about Family Guy.
Yeah. He's never denied it.
Yeah, his basic response is, so what's the big deal?
Right.
But my point is that Dan Harmon doesn't think that much about how he writes a Rick and Morty episode.
No, in fact, if we believe Dan Harmon, he is an awkward weirdo who doesn't think about what he's doing at all. He just does things.
And he's really, really angry about Joseph Campbell, which is
Right.
an incredibly weird position to have.
I mean, it's not, but it is.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Joseph Campbell said, here's what the most successful stories through written history have all done.
Okay, so I suspect I'm gonna project here because I can't say for certain. We're Dan Harmon. If you're out there, come on our show and tell us we're fuckos. I want you to do it. Okay. But as you know, or as maybe you don't know, maybe the audience doesn't know. The audience that's not even here. I don't like Tolkien. Okay. I also don't like Joseph Campbell. Right. But why? Cultural sacred cows. Okay. Tolkien did not invent fantasy, is not
Right.
the end all be all of fantasy, and is not the best of fantasy. He is
Right.
merely a one luminary among many. Right?
Right.
But there are people that will suck his undead rancid cock because they believe that he's going to somehow invigorate them to be writers like he is. Right? In a few short years, when Martin is dead, we will see the same kind of cultists gather around his rancid corpse.
I mean, we would, except
He hasn't died yet.
Well, no. He is because of his unfinished work.
Right. But somebody is gonna finish it. Some posthumous collaborator will complete it. And then we'll have debates about whether or not this is how Martin would have done it. The thing is that then you have Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell was an academic.
Mhm.
The hero's journey is an academic text. It is not a guidebook on how to write or how to tell a good story. It is a description of one interpretation of a set of information about how something might work by one academician.
Well, I mean, in fairness, I think it's a lot like Save the Cat, right? You know, you shouldn't use it as a hard and fast rule, but it says, here's what all the successful authors have done. It condenses that all down.
But here's the thing, because I will cut Campbell more slack than Tolkien. Tolkien lived long enough to be an asshole. Okay?
Joseph Campbell was a mensch, apparently.
Joseph Campbell was a mensch. He never said, this is the roadmap, do this. People posthumously said, oh, we have to use the hero's journey. That's the guideline. And they elevated him onto a pedestal. They made him a god. Okay? So I can understand if we assume that what's his name from Rick and Morty doesn't like Campbell because of the deification. Because stories don't have to follow the hero's journey. Right?
Well, I mean, if your story's about a hero, it probably should.
It doesn't have to.
Well, I
Because
mean,
here's the thing. The difference is the vitriol, the venom in it. Okay? You come to me, you say, Joe, are you gonna write a fantasy story? I'm like, sure, I'll write a fantasy story. You're like, you gonna follow the hero's journey? It's like, I'll try not to. It's like, okay, but what if you end up doing it? I'm like, okay, shit happens. Well, who are you gonna derive them? Who are your influences? We know who my influences are, Larry. Robert E. Howard.
Mhm.
I'm gonna go classic. Lieber, DeCamp. I'm gonna lean into those classic fantasy guys. Moorcock. It's gonna be amazing, right? And it's like, but what about the hero's journey? It's like, if it happens, it happens. I don't care. It's not my primary thought process, right?
I mean, realistically,
The guy from Rick and Morty doesn't just dislike the sacred cow. He's actively trying to attack it and attack people for having it. If you have the hero's journey, you're shit. It's like, no, you're not. You're not terrible if the hero's journey happens.
you see, if you're editing the story, you think it's weak, you pull up like the hero's journey, or you pull up the American monomyth, and you say, maybe if I tweak it like this, it might be better.
Right.
That's how you should use it. It's a tool.
Right. Right. That's the thing. And there's nothing wrong with using tools. But there are people that think tools are evil.
Yeah.
Right? It's very much in the realm of, well, if you used it, you endorsed it. And it's like, no. I can quote something I don't like and still, not like it.
Mm-hmm. So, do we want to talk about how they're planning to go deeper in ruining Harry Potter?
I mean, we will. We've actually rolled up. We've got the list. We got the list of things. So, because tonight's show is not actually the gay pride event we thought it was going to be. We're actually just talking about slop. What are your thoughts about the Dragon Age creator?
Admitting that they were retarded?
Dragon Age creator says EA execs thought BioWare fans would eat whatever slop they were given, since the nerds in the cave would always show up for an RPG because it was an RPG.
I mean, that is exactly the thinking in fake BioWare, which was actually a company that wore the name of BioWare like a skin suit. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, we could talk about Avengers Doomsday, but why? The argument that there just won't be a snap to save people is like, get fucked. Obviously, this is about wrapping up contractual obligations, and no one of consequence will really die. They'll just get a actor change. So, they found a girl of color to be Hermione, and apparently it's true. Apparently, Snape is going to be a black guy.
Yep.
And as someone has said, quote, Snape is a black incel that is obsessed with a white woman, and Draco is yelling racial slurs at a brown girl. They really didn't think this one through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Another one I found was great is the optics now is that two white men make fun of a POC woman and call her dramatic and emotional because she doesn't like elf slavery. And let's not forget the slur for muggles is mudbloods.
Well, no, let me correct. Mudblood is for wizards of less than pure breeding. Muggle is also a slur for normals.
Yes, so it would be contextually appropriate in the Harry Potter thing to call a black person who's a wizard a mudblood.
Even though that is perhaps visually not a great idea.
No, it's extremely racist. It's extremely racist. So the real reasons that are going on here is they made Snape a black guy as a protest against Donald Trump. Because Trump was pushing back against DEI, so the studio wanted to be defined. And that was a dumb idea. It was a dumb idea because James Potter and his friends are going to be harassing a black guy for looking askance at a white woman.
Well, since we've I don't know if you can bring up the banner, but since we're in racism time,
I can't.
Okay, cool. I want to talk about some racism here for a minute, because this actually has a deeper context to something we've mentioned previously. Whether on show or in private, you and I have talked about, and I know I've talked about with Church, the inappropriateness and the utter failure of context to the idea of the American experience in the wizarding world, where in Magical Beasts, Magical Murica is just the American government, but it's run by wizards in a very proper English way, and not reflective of the various tribes, cultures, and the sort of melting pot of magical traditions that would make an America. The hoodoo, the voodoo, the Native American tribalism, the Strega, the Russian magic, on and on and on. Let's talk about it, because they opened the box. If you were in America and you were a wizard and you called a black wizard a mudblood in this country, they'd fucking kill you in the street.
Yeah.
Because America does, true statement, have a history with some intense racial inequity and some intense racial discomfiture. Our slurs and our slang would not replicate the Wizarding World slang across the pond. In fact, if an American exchange student of color went to Hogwarts and Draco Malfoy called him a mudblood, that kid would cast the most powerful spell that Draco Malfoy has ever experienced, and it's called Fist. And it's like, you can't beat someone in the school. It's like, I fucking did. I'll do it again.
Yeah.
I actually hate, as a human being in real life, not the word muggle because it's in the dictionary, not because people use it to stand in for muddle, a word that already exists, but because people attribute it to themselves all the time. I'm just a muggle. It's like, why are you slurring in your own direction? I don't walk around and say, sorry guys, I'm a cracker. I'm just too fucking stupid for the street. Yeah, that's not what you do in a real life context. The fuck?
Yeah.
You know, as a white guy walks up to a black guy and says, I'm sorry, I'm just too much of a Negro. It's like, no, God, no.
Yeah. And,
I'll even give you another example that is not Harry Potter related, because this does not just happen in Harry Potter. So you and I are familiar with Vampire the Requiem. Do you know what they did in the Ghoul book, and one of the reasons that book is banned in my game?
I did not.
So they decided they wanted to give ghouls a lexicon of slang, right? For vampire things.
Yeah, I remember some of that.
Which makes sense, right? But instead of making up their own slang, their own subcultural context for things like vampires feeding on you, they literally lifted a lower London slang diary of homosexual subculture terms and then rebranded them with vampire-specific definitions. And when I told this to Allison, a friend of ours in common, who is of an English descent, who lives in Europe, they were fucking livid. Right? Don't do this. Don't do this. I could abide Snape being black and maybe the problems of that if you weren't in your zeal to color up the very white Harry Potter, creating other contexts and other problems.
I mean, this actually goes to something similar to, you remember Fan Four Stick?
Yes, I do remember Fan Four Stick.
And they made Michael B. Jordan be Johnny Storm, even though that didn't make any goddamn sense.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it have been more interesting if they made Michael B. Jordan Reed Richards?
I mean, maybe. It's still weird, but at least it's better. Because Michael B. Jordan as Johnny is complicated because he's the brother of Sue Storm. But Reed Richards is just a dude. You could mix it up. You could change it.
And also, they don't want to have the black guy be sexing up all the women. Albeit in Fan Four Stick, that was less of a problem because it was about body horror for some reason.
Right.
But if we were to, travel back in time and change things and make Michael B. Jordan, Reed Richards, you have the smartest man in the world being a black man. That's exciting. That's interesting. Right?
Yeah.
And you have him being with a white chick. Okay, that's a little too spicy potentially for the studio, but it's still an interesting concept.
It would certainly be better than the other option.
Yes.
And you know what the other option is?
What's the other option?
Pedro Pascal being Reed Richards, talking about how Reed Richards has infinite layers. Because we're going to have a more emotionally available Reed Richards.
Oh, wow.
While we have a Johnny Storm who is going to be less of a leg hound and an adventurer. Because, hey, why not destroy all the romance while we're at it?
I mean, as much as I hate it, I would rather have Johnny Storm having sex with weird aliens than him not being a romantic character.
Yeah. So basically, for people who don't know, Pedro Pascal is more or less being given carte blanche to do whatever the fuck he wants with this character because they believe Pedro Pascal is a moneymaker.
Pedro Pascal has reached the level as an actor where he can play stock Pedro Pascal characters.
Yeah, and he is burning his currency fast.
So I also want to talk about the fact that the franchise that nobody saw coming has another chapter emerging from it. Knives Out has another movie.
I think it has accidentally tripped into something.
Hmm?
I think they decided to go, hey, what if we actually made a movie instead of just making a shit post?
I mean, there's several of these that are actual movies.
Oh, dead. Oh, dead.
Impossible crime.
Won't you spare me over till another year?
For man a reason. This is the Holy Grail.
This was dressed as a miracle. It's just a murder. And I solved murders.
I'll open the door to heaven or hell.
Now, see, it's a teaser, so it could be bullshit, right?
I mean, no. I think these things tease well, but when you actually see the movies, as we all remember from the last one,
right?
It's not smart. It's just dumb.
But that's the thing, though, is that the last two were basically shitposts mocking the genre. If this teaser were true, it's possible they actually just said, you know what if we surprise everyone and just make the genre film? Right?
I mean, I think the teasers from before also made you think they were playing it straight.
Yeah, that's the thing, though, is that I never watched them. I waited till they came out because Rian Johnson is toxic. That man is nuclear. He should not be allowed to touch anything. He fucked a multi-million-dollar franchise, a billion-dollar property.
And he made a shitty time travel movie.
Yeah.
And he made a okay Sam Spade movie based it with a high school Sam Spade.
Yeah.
Ryan is one of these peak directors who started out as a nobody, who leveled up his game. And say what you will about Ryan Coogler, he was the same kind of director. And they both are doing good work, even if a lot of it is sloppy and crappy.
Well, let's talk about actual good work for just a minute, because I don't think Rian Johnson does good work. I think Rian Johnson had a good movie and got jobs that far outstripped his skill. But Clint Eastwood is now 95 and is making a movie.
I mean, I thought his last movie was his last movie. So I'm intrigued.
Yeah. And he started out as an actor in the late 50s.
In the old West.
He has been working in Hollywood without getting corrupted into a cheap loser for decades. People want to talk about are we back and what does a good movie look like? Just wait for whatever the fuck Clint Eastwood's gonna drop.
Well, I don't think he's making good movies, but I think he's making the movies he wants to make.
He's making movies better than the slop. He's not making slop.
His last movie wasn't really that good.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
It was 12 Angry Men, but one of the Angry Men was the actual criminal.
Here's the thing. I will go back to the beginning to give a comparison by saying that Clint Eastwood both made a good movie followed by a bad movie, and nobody remembers either of them.
Well, Clint Eastwood was a lot like Bruce Willis was towards the end of his career.
Right.
He's made so much good, high-quality material. Any sins he makes at the end of his career are going to be forgiven.
Right, but I'm talking about the beginning of his career. So, after he did Dirty Harry, okay, but at the same time he was doing things like Every Which Way But Loose, he did The Begotten. Some people who are serious Western people might remember The Begotten, which is a historical drama during the Reconstruction. He's a soldier who gets wounded during the Civil War. It's basically miserable.
Yes.
Okay?
I remember that.
That movie was received very poorly, and it makes sense. It's sleazy and pornographic. What people forget is the movie he made before that, his actual debut film as a director, where he was a leading man. Did you ever see Play Misty for Me?
I did, yes.
That is an amazing film. That movie is scary as shit.
I watched that movie because that's one of the movies my mother likes.
Wow, really? And you like it, which is surprising because I know Larry Mom and Larry have difficulty connecting, so that's great.
Yeah.
But my
Mom has
mom,
good taste.
literally, it was on some channel one night, and my mom was like, "Oh, that's a really good movie," and I'm like, "Oh, okay," and she's like, "It's really scary," and I'm like, "I like scary," and then I watched it, and I'm like, "Holy shit, this is scary."
One of my mom's favorite movies is Heavy Metal.
Okay, I'm now very interested.
Because, she was the right age. She was in her... Heavy Metal came out in, 74, 75?
The book? Yeah.
No, the movie.
No, the movie came out in the 80s. The movie is surprisingly recent.
Yeah, but she was the right age. She was in her 30s, and a friend of hers told her to watch it, and she was hooked in right away from that opening sequence with the Corvette and the bomber and the classic Americana and the gothic horror sort of stuff.
So to be clear, because it's actually funny, Heavy Metal is 81.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, August 81, and then in quick succession, right? Conan the Barbarian was 82,
mm-hmm.
and Predator was either 84 or 85.
Mm-hmm.
We had such an era of good movies in the 80s.
Oh yeah. But my mom also liked the Mickey Spillane cab driver.
Harry Canyon.
Yeah, love that. And one of the things I really love about it is, of course, Captain Stern.
Stern!
To the point in one of my regular role-playing games here in my real life, my Flesh and Blood role-playing games, Captain Stern and Hanover Fist are recurring NPCs.
I quote from the Wikipedia because I had to look up the year. On a space station, crooked space captain Lincoln F. Stern is on trial for numerous charges presented by the prosecutor, consisting of 12 counts of murder in the first degree, 14 counts of armed theft of Federation property, 22 counts of piracy in high space, 18 counts of fraud, 37 counts of rape, and 1 moving violation.
But of course, Hanover Fist actually details additional crimes that he was not charged with.
Additional crimes that are too awful to say on this show.
like the preschooler prostitution ring, or all the times he sold dope disguised as a nun.
Look, he's a vile, perverted worm who should, and hanging's too good for him. Shooting's too good for him. He should be cut up into itty bitty pieces and buried alive.
I also love the sequence. I also love the sequence with Stern's lawyer saying, "Listen, you should throw yourself on the mercy of the court so you can be buried in secrecy, so people won't defile your grave."
I got an angle. Oh, this actually entire subject change. This reminds me of a joke I made earlier today in D&D. I have a Sunday D&D game like at 8 in the morning. So hilarious. I run fucking Empire all day until midnight, and then I get 8 hours of sleep, and then I go play D&D on Sunday. And my character is a paladin of law. Background is a knight of the order, and the order is loyal to the state, loyal to the crown, right? So and because this is Ravenloft, I'm basically presenting it as I am Russian KGB man. I work for I worked for Papa Stalin before Strahd, and I don't understand now why everything is wrong, because the state is never wrong, right? Which means there's a little bit of Judge Dredd and there's a little bit of nudge nudge wink wink Russian block going on. We entered a tomb and we encountered flaming skulls, which they were described to us as simply appearing like supernatural entities, right? So I whipped out my Warhammer, which we have agreed is my nightstick, because if you don't stop resisting, I'll hit you with the Warhammer. I put my shield out in front of me to protect myself in the narrow hallway, and I proceeded to directly quote Ray Stans from Ghostbusters, inviting the entities to leave this dimension or to the nearest dimension of their convenience as a duly designated official of the city, state, and province of Barovia. But the GM gave me inspiration for that.
Although Church isn't here, I'd like to talk a little bit about the canceled reboot of Power Rangers that was going to be on Netflix.
See, I thought we were going to talk about Ra's al Ghul.
I mean, it's absolute Superman. It's an absolute piece of garbage.
It is absolute trash. Absolutely.
So, asked by one Reddit user if said project would have been a new take on Mighty Morphin or something new, the former reboot Shepard detailed, from early 2018, I created an entire new universe for Power Rangers, kind of a multiverse. It was very fashionable back then. I was doing Mighty Morphin Power Rangers specifically, but Tommy Oliver, originally portrayed by the late Jason David Frank, was the center of the world and the mythology was all surrounding around him being one of the most important people in the universe because we all know what he would become. So it was basically a time-bending, huge story about stopping Dracon from taking power over everything. The TV series was really kind of a cool King Arthur vibe. There was this angle, more mystical and magical to start us off with. They had somebody from Jessica Jones and Supernatural being involved in the writing. And Hasbro was the one who pulled the plug.
Okay.
And this was pulled in part because they brought in the film company that made the horrible D&D movie. To run the production.
You know, that pain in my ass was recently brought up in my feed, so
yeah,
that I feel that. I feel that in my teeth.
And then it became an issue where all the different people who had a piece of the Power Rangers IP were wanting to get involved, and it became untenable, ultimately, as a production. So that is kind of interesting, but let's talk about the dumb Marvel editorial position on Captain Hydra.
Oh, okay.
Marvel Comics executive editor reflects on Captain America Hydra reveal. We were perhaps under-concerned about the impact this moment was going to have. I mean, you weren't under-concerned. You weren't concerned at all. You didn't think about it. While he has no regrets regarding the controversial storyline itself, it generally feels like it wrapped up in a mostly satisfying way. No, they just used the cosmic cube to hand wave it, and then Hydra Cap showed back up later.
And it's actually extra funny. Hydra Cap showed up not only in one place, he showed up in two places.
Yes.
Are you familiar with the character of Soldier?
Yes.
Are you familiar that he is now a major component of Moon Knight?
I was not.
Yeah, so in the lore of Moon Knight, as they have raked his corpse over the fire before bringing him back literally 2 issues later, what they have done, okay, since the Mr. Knight run, which was halfway decent, was first they gave him a new girlfriend in the form of Tigra the Werewoman, because they said you can't be with Marlene. She doesn't want anything to do with you because of the power difference, even though you gave her a baby and she has your child, because you're just too crazy, Mark. So instead you get to be with Tigra and her kid, because Tigra is both watching you for the Avengers, because the Avengers don't trust you, a crazy man, to be on your own, and you're banging the person spying on you, who is now pathologically obsessed with him, because she's violently protective of her man that you're spying on for the Avengers. Mm-hmm. And he started a thing called the Night Mission. He basically got a haunted house from Doc Strange, right? Mm-hmm. Which was, possessed by a murderous ghost. And he has started collecting quote-unquote night travelers, various entities of power that collaborate with him to protect people at night, which means that he has a girl boss vampire, and they have Soldier, who became a vampire as part of the recent vampire event, where Blade was getting training from Dracula and vampires tried to take over the world. So Soldier, on a redemption arc, is now a vampire working for Moon Knight, and everyone's wearing white suits, and it's fucking retarded. They found a way to make Moon Knight not likable in Moon Knight's own book. A third tier book that really should be left to its own fucking devices. Because they said, hey, what if we made Moon Knight trash like everything else? So yeah, they thought that story ended amicably and that nobody would mind, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is called a backpedal?
Yes, so Steve got made old because they needed a reason to make Black Cap to justify Black Cap for the Marvel movies. And now that it took them 8 years...
Holy shit, we actually had people in the audience and I didn't notice.
Who's in the audience?
Oh, Wisdom, if he's still there. Nice. Holy shit! He was asking if we watched the old, if my folks watched the old westerns. Did your folks watch the old westerns? I think all of our folks watched the old westerns.
Yeah.
And yes, there is totally a cable channel just for those. Wibbs, it's great to see you, man. I wish Church was here, but he's not.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we were talking about fucking Soldier and Hydra Cap. I mean, Wibbs, if you had voice, I would be like, Larry, should we add him? Yeah, but whatever.
I mean, we're near the end, unfortunately.
Yeah. Look, this has to be a backpedal because they didn't underestimate the Hydra Cap was done with intention. It was malice of forethought, and we fucking know it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
it's because thought it would be revealed in the true comic book form that this Hydra Cap was actually a fake version of Steve. That was not exactly what happened. That was none of what happened at all.
Well, it's also it's also I'm actually going to lay the blame not entirely at the current staff who just had to again muddle through with what they had. This is actually Joey Q's fault.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it Joey Q's fault? How is it Joey Q's fault? Because Dark Reign was not supposed to end. Ever. It was not planned to end. Right? They created the new normal with the original Civil War arc.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Which was heroes fighting heroes. Then they had that wrapped up. Then they ran Tony fucking things up for a while. Then they had Tony lose so that Tony could get redeemed badly. And then they had Norman Osborn kill the Skrull Queen so that he could become the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. Because then we could talk about how the government's evil by having a literal supervillain run it. Right? Even though S.H.I.E.L.D. is not actually the government. It's a department, what have you. And then the Dark Reign was supposed to be the new normal. And the Dark Reign was, I will actually credit them halfway decent for a bit. Right? But the thing is that it had to end. You couldn't pad that out for 10 or 20 years. That was not going to happen, guys. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And we all knew it wasn't going to happen because it's an event. It's an event where the bad guys are in charge. And you did this 3 other times. Fear itself, and that one with the Red Skull, where all the bad guys become good guys and all the good guys become bad guys, and so on. What was it? That Onslaught affected event.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, they wanted the bad guys in charge, and somebody was like, "Well, what if it turned out, shock? What if Steve was actually the bad guy all along?" And then it would be Steve versus heroes. Heroes fighting Steve. That was what they wanted to do. And then they found out how badly they fucked up, because even though Captain America is a second-tier character, he has his fans, but he's never been front row, right? People love Captain America.
They do.
Superman's a front row character, solidly.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do Superman as villain arcs or stories. Okay, to the extent we have fucking Injustice. Ugh. But eventually you have to have Superman go back to normal. There has to be an out.
Oh.
You can't leave Superman a villain forever. Nobody will stand for it.
Also, Superman as a villain is dumb.
And Superman as a villain is dumb. Everybody agrees without being told, and it's not the propaganda, it's because of the nature of the character. Steve's a good guy. Steve is the good guy. USA Agent exists because they wanted to say, well, not everyone's up to Steve's standard.
Well, I mean, U.S. Agent is...
And Walker's not a bad guy. He's just not as good as Steve.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You and I were talking about this in relative to something else earlier. You have to have your groundwork laid. You have to have your extremes placed in. It doesn't matter if Tony and Steve disagree. Steve is not necessarily right ethically or morally all the time, but he is at least always motivated by being the good guy in the room. Anytime they try to set up that situation where Steve and Tony slap fight, Tony's wrong!
Mm-hmm.
Of course he's fucking wrong, because Captain America doesn't make decisions that aren't good or aren't just. He's Captain fucking America. He always has been.
So let's bounce over to Ra's al Ghul for a moment.
Okay.
Ra's al Ghul in Arabic is the demon's head. And I decided, for shits and giggles, to ask ChatGPT what the god's head would mean. Rasu Allah, the head of God. However, this phrase is highly problematic in Islamic theologies, as in Judaism, because God, Allah, is completely transcendent and without a body. And assigning a body part to God, like a head, is considered anthropomorphism and is strictly rejected in mainstream Sunni Islam. Saying Rashu Allah would be viewed as theologically incorrect or even blasphemous unless used clearly as a metaphor.
So I actually looked into this through different sources. I didn't use ChatGPT. There are multiple terms for God beyond Allah,
but not in Arabic.
No, in Arabic. And there are several different conjunctions of how you would use the head, right? So the form might be different. It might not actually be the name you've outlined. But on the other hand, let's be clear, because again, we're talking about comics guys in current year. They knew what they were doing. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what conjunction they come up with. It doesn't matter how they try to present it. It doesn't matter if he just insists on being called the God's Head in English. They knew exactly what they were doing. They knew exactly what controversy they were courting, and they knew exactly how lazy it was, and didn't care because they think that asses and seats is money, and that's all they want.
So I have a contradictory point of view on that. I don't think that there's anybody intelligent enough to have thought maybe we should check and see if this might be offensive.
Oh, they didn't. Oh no, they didn't. They didn't even ask if it would be offensive. Okay.
I'm not sure they knew. I think they might have been too stupid.
No. When I say they knew what they were doing, what I mean is that they knew that they said, well, Ra's al Ghul is from the Middle East, so he must therefore be Muslim. Even though, more accurately, given how old he is, he's probably Arabian, and that matters, right? And they said, well, if he's a Muslim, then he has to, and he's doing his hero turn. Then obviously he's going to be named Allah, right? And it's like, no, because even the demon's head isn't actually right. Because Ra's al Ghul would actually be the head of the Ghul, which is a specific form of undead. Not that I've ever seen Ra's al Ghul eat anybody alive.
I mean, that's a commentary on its environmentalism, I think.
Right.
But also, my other real big problem with the way he was drawn in this comic page is he looks like Vandal fucking Savage. Why did they just use Vandal Savage?
Because it's absolute, and nobody cares.
I mean, Vandal Savage would have been a better character to use there.
Anyone would have been a better character to use. Absolute would be better if they just didn't fucking make it.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. When they came up with Absolute Batman, you and I had a strenuous debate. I don't recall if it was on show or in private, because you and I talk.
I think it was both. About
whether or not poor Batman works. Okay? And I strenuously argued that it doesn't matter if Batman's poor. It's not about the money. Okay? It's about the character. It's about the personality. Poor Batman can work. But that doesn't mean that the Absolute brand or the Absolute event or the Absolute push isn't trash. The whole thing is trash. This is the Dark Knights or DC Metal or any number of the other recent events all over again. It's another sloppy short-term event that has no staying power because they'll just get rid of Absolute at the end. None of it happened. Right? It should be Elseworlds. This should be a what-if comic. But it's not. Right? And the thing is that with that in mind, it's like, so why did they use Ra's al Ghul? Why not Vandal Savage? Because it's a Batman book. Gotta use Ra's al Ghul. But Vandal Savage can be anybody's antagonist. Isn't Vandal's... When I was introduced to Vandal Savage, he was in a Flash book.
He was.
Being an enemy for Flash. Is he a Flash villain?
I don't remember who he was originally a villain for. Let's look that up. See, this is why we need a Church to be here.
Church would know.
he would have had that answer on tap.
He's a
Alright.
Green Lantern villain. He first appeared in Green Lantern number 10.
Yeah.
43. But having said that, that's the other problem with this comic run.
Although
Right.
in context, in the publication context, he actually fought Golden Age Green Lantern first.
Yeah, in 43.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Ultimately, none of this matters, right? Which I've already said like a couple of times. But specifically, it's like, why not Vandal Savage? Why Vandal Savage? Not because he's a better character, but like, what would it matter? What would his involvement contribute? The story's not good. The materials are not being used well. Nobody's on character. And the very thesis of this event is, what if the world was eerily the same, but everybody sucked?
Well, I mean, Vandal Savage could reveal the deeper retcons of things.
Sure, if he was being used as a tool, but they just use him as a villain. He would just basically be the same, but not. Look, this is a wider commentary about the abuse of multiverse theory. Okay? And I'm actually going to go at this from a different direction, from something not DC related. I don't care if they bought it because DC has money. Okay? The Authority fly around through a ship that can travel the multiverse. Okay? And they've been to multiple realities. And in their early books, there were some very interesting things that they visited. Okay? But they immediately fell into the trap that all multiverses do when they're used by hacks. Right? Instead of being alternate dimensions, and the dimensions are interesting. Right? Aloe, what if the universe was made of fire? Right? And it's like, okay, well, what does the elemental plane of fire look like when it's modern Earth in the 20th century, right? That could be interesting. Instead of that, right, they went, okay, so like, what if there was an Earth, but everyone was black? And it's like, what do you mean everyone? It's like, and this is actually directly from the comics. Like, no, there's a reality out there where every single person is black. No white people exist whatsoever. And but history and all the movements of history and all the events of history are identical, right? So that means that on this world, black people had the Black Confederacy and enslaved other black people. And there was a black Nazi party, and there was a black World War II with black Nazis murdering other black people. And this was an interesting world because why? No, it's stupid.
And let's not forget there's that comic book about what if black people had superpowers, but all their history was the same.
Right. It's very sloppy, and that's the thing. That's what Absolute is. Absolute is, okay, what if Darkseid imprinted his mind onto the universe? Okay, that could be interesting. How does that play itself out? Everything's the same, but it sucks. Sucks like the metal event? No, it's not. It's not black metal. It just sucks. So sucks like after the New 52 event, where everything was the same, but you had new things and you introduced a girl question. No, this is different. Okay, sucks how? All right, what if all the heroes were edgy badasses? So you mean like the Knights event, but they were also fuckos. Okay. And what if Batman used an axe to dismember people? Why? because he uses tools to save people from buildings and stuff. You know, if you dismember people, they die, right? Yeah, but Batman doesn't kill people. Fuck you. Okay, but we're gonna have Ra's al Ghul. All right, what's Ra's al Ghul doing? How is the mastermind going to do something interesting? Okay, so he's gonna be like a good guy. All right, carry on. And he's gonna call himself the God's Head. Fuck you. Again, it falls under that if a wizard did it premise, your story's bad. The more times that your story leads me to look at you in response and say fuck you, the more hard you fucked up. That's actually, since we're not Matt and Parker and Trey Stone, that's better advice for a schoolroom. If your plot leads the audience to interrupt you to say fuck off, you failed. Okay? What you want is to present an idea interesting enough that people either say, but why though, and have a good answer to follow, or say, tell me more. That's what you want. If they don't want to know more, and they're not confused enough to keep listening, you failed. You just straight up failed.
Huh? Absolutely.
Absolute Line is a failure. Ra's al Ghul is the Godhead is a failure. The people involved should be ashamed of themselves.
They don't understand. I mean, nobody understands how to publish things. The publication industry is just gone. They've lost their ability to produce work.
I mean, I'm not going to disagree with you, but it's actually weirder than that. See, I've talked before about Marvel's fucked up submissions guideline structure where you just go to conventions and hope. Right? Go to conventions and hope, and maybe if they've heard of you, you'll get to work for them.
Mm-hmm.
But only if you're really a Nepo baby, because they don't actually pull from conventions anymore. They're pulling from, like, you know, Insta.
But I mean, we used to have magazines.
Right,
magazines used to be a big thing.
But are you familiar with what DC is doing for their new talent?
I'm not.
They have a college.
Really?
You can go to California. You can sign up. It's an incredibly limited number of seats. Okay. At your expense. It's not like it's a college where you get accreditation. You don't get to walk out with a BA or something. Right? What you're doing is you're paying for the privilege to learn from DC how to make books in the DC fashion that if you are the highest 1% of that class, you might get hired for DC. With no promise you actually will.
I mean, that is kind of shit.
Because it's a scam. And when I was looking at submission guidelines and I went to the big ones, I said, what the fuck? I'll give it a shot. Let's see what the big ones have to say. They were like, we do not currently accept submissions. However, we do have a school. And I was like, fuck your scam. Fuck your shit. Mm-hmm. Okay. Just literally, because let me get this straight. I go to your school for like several months. I want to say like 3 months. Right? You have to go to California. You've got to be in the California area. So breaking the bank already. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And pay you the privilege to get ass fucked. So that if I take it the best, maybe I get to go be ass fucked by DC in their offices for minimal pay.
Yeah. Well, we did something we almost never do in these situations where it's just you and me. We were able to power through 2 hours with good, solid material.
I mean, I hope so. Mostly it was me rambling at you.
I think it was pretty good. I think this all worked out pretty good.
I mean, do you have a final thought? A final Larryism?
My final thought is it's almost midnight. Actually, it's a little after midnight, and I need to go to bed. So Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Doo, doo, doo.